I learned early on I had a small infant that I needed to embalm, and this was early in my career, and I let it bother me. I mean, it affected me greatly, and I didn't know if I wanted to do this job.
When Phil Rowert woke up Saturday morning, somebody had died. He went to move the body and then went back to sleep. It's a typical Saturday morning for the funeral director at Wyuka.
At 12:15 a.m., I was in my nice warm bed, and the hospital called, and somebody had died. So as soon as they die, we go to the place of death, make the removal of the dead human body from the place of death, bring them back here and embalm them. So I did that. Then I went home and went back to bed. Then I got up at 8 o'clock and come to work, and had another death around 10 o'clock, and took care of the things that I needed to do at that time. And then today I'll leave here and I'll be on call all weekend on my cell phone.
As Rowert explained, being a funeral director isn't about the dead. It's about comforting the living.
You know, one of the biggest things that people say, well, how can you enjoy your work? Well, if I've done my job and we've went through the whole funeral and they say, Phil, Mom looked great, you did a wonderful job, we couldn't thank you enough, and give me a hug or a handshake, that's what I enjoy about my job. I know I did it correctly.
To become a funeral director in Nebraska, the process isn't easy. After earning an associate's degree, Rowert had to go to a school of mortuary science and then had a year-long apprenticeship.
Well, in my hometown, I always had great respect for the funeral director that was in town. I just liked what he did and thought it was a nice profession, and I was wandering around at different jobs for 10 years, and I decided I better find a career, and this funeral home was hiring a pre-need salesperson. And pre-need is a term that means people that, elderly people mostly, they go to funeral homes and pre-arrange their funerals, and pay for their funerals so their loved ones or kids don't have to decide what mom and dad wanted for a funeral. So they go in and pick out their services, caskets, grave spaces, monuments, all things like that. So I started out in pre-need, and I got into the funeral home working with them, and I just decided, this is what I'm going to do, so I went back to school.
When a person dies, their body immediately starts to decompose. Without embalming, a loved one will look quite different in the casket.
Our body is a closed system. Okay, when I say it's a closed system, I mean blood flows out of our heart through the arterial system, gets out to the ends of our fingers, ends of our toes, top of our head, goes through the capillaries, returns to our heart in a vein. So it pumps out in the arteries, returns in a vein. So that's the way the heart works. Every beat of our heart, that's happening. So what I do is I make an incision, and I make an incision, and I find usually I find the internal, the jugular vein and the internal jugular artery, and I actually make an incision in those, and then I actually pump embalming fluid through the arteries. So as I'm pushing embalming fluid through the arteries, it's pushing the blood through the body, and the blood is returning to the heart, but it's draining back out of the vein. So it's coming out of the body, so it's not staying in the body. In that was a closed circulatory system. I opened it, pumping in fluid through a machine that acts like the heart, pumps the fluid in, returns the blood out, because I need the blood out of a body to slow down decomposition.
A funeral director's job is often misunderstood, but Rowert knew this was the career for him.
I'll be at a dinner party or something, and somebody asks what I do, and their first response is, "Ooh," but then tell me more.
As Rowert closed Wyuka Funeral Home Saturday afternoon, he headed off to a basketball game. He hoped he could stay the entire time, but he was still on call. As Rowert said, "Death knows no hour."